3 of an interview with Bobby Gant, November 11th, 1996.
Mm.
And you were talking about George Odd and the Democrat Party.
Yeah, well, it wasn't politics at the time. It was just, I was the president of the United St. Jerome's, and George Odd, I felt, was running, he was in politics, and he sort of saw that maybe that could do him some good by an organization. I know what it was. And in the meantime, he was giving me this information about how kids could get jobs and things.
Was he a commissioner?
He was a commissioner at the time, and he was running, he was getting ready to run an election again, And he'd come in the store, and I guess I impressed him because I was always talking in my mouth. So anyhow, he was the one. And then I find out that the jobs that they were giving, they didn't even ask on the applications how much money you made, anything. I found out later that these commissioners had jobs they was giving up to the political buddies. And after that, I had no problem. All of my kids just about worked in summer programs. And but it was always used to bother me how these kids were getting these jobs, and every time I went over, they always said I made too much money. You made too much money. Your kids can't participate. So
It didn't have anything to do with race, did it?
No.
No.
But it wasn't a whole lot of black kids out there. Well, in a way, it did, because most of the kids were white, unless you were a black that was already participating in the political thing. Your kids just didn't get no jobs. They didn't have no summer jobs for them. But after I found out, and then I was able to help my kids to get their little summer jobs and things. It was a big help.
Now, have you had to do any campaigning?
For George Odd?
Or for anybody?
Yes, I participated in a lot of campaigns. Each one of Walter Dawson's campaigns I participated in, George Odd's, and then what happened was, I changed the Night St. Jerome's completely, because when I became president, it was you had to make a pledge that anything that went on in the meetings, that you couldn't tell anybody, except in confession to a priest. I had that constant change. I basically made it a organization that was more community friendly, because if you didn't belong to it, you're. So, and after 7.5 years, I really changed them around, and I did it through politics. I invited politicians down. I had political forums where they would come down and debate their issues, and I really got them involved. And I also, when I became president, we had $250 in our bank account, and that was it. And we were giving $200 away. I didn't know $150 away at that time for if you died and was a member of the organization, your family got $150. I changed all of that. When I left after 7.5 years, we had something like $17,000 in the bank. It did about $9,000 on the building. And and a lot of the older people, they quit because they said I took religion out of it. But it wasn't going to survive if it kept going the way it was going.
You'd have to get back into the community.
Right, right. And it wasn't community friendly, and we had one thing every year. We had this 15 August fair, and they would work yourself to death all night long.
Hello?
I'm trying to come in. The funny part about it was, when I first joined, they didn't want me to join in the beginning. Number one, the president didn't want me to join. My uncle and the vice president was friends. So what they did was, the Sunday that the president was off, they came in and swore me in. So when he came back, I was already a member. But they advised me to keep my mouth shut and just sit back and listen. And I used to question the way they did things. They would have this fair, and late that night, they would all go upstairs in this little room where the old classroom used to be, and they count the money, and they didn't work me to death because I'm new. But I couldn't be up there when they were counting the money. And then I find out this next meeting that they didn't made $200, you know. And I remember the first year I became president, we cleared, after expenses, we cleared $1,500, and that was amazing.
Yeah,
That they had never did it before.
yeah. Big change.
It was, I made a drastic change, and Father Walsh was the priest there at that time, and he sort of seen what I was doing, and we really got together, and we changed the whole thing. We changed the Constitution and everything.
He encouraged you.
Yeah, he was good for it. But like I said, a lot of older people, they left. They said, that I took the religion out of it because they thought it was more religious organization than and I changed it. I had politicians down there, left and right. Dinners, when we sold dinners, it was basically the people around. The members bought dinners, and then some of the people. Then people they would come, but it wasn't nothing big. But after we we sold more dinners than they could cook.
So you're proud of that contribution.
Oh yeah. It'll never go back to what it was. It'll never go back to what it was. It is, I put it on a new course, and it was for the better. And like I said, some of the people didn't like it, so they got out. But you couldn't let that stop you. You have to keep getting up. And right now, and now it's functioning well, and it's functioning the way that I changed it.
It has a real function now.
Yeah, right. We get it right now. They give us scholarships, and it has real, But at one time they didn't do anything but just sat there. And I think I had belonged to it for about 5 years, but I never forget. This old lady, she had been into the organization about 30 or 35 years,
So it has women members?
Members and men, yeah, women and men, yeah. And I remember this Miss Helen Young, I never forget her, because this Mr. Aloysius Butler had been president for maybe 7, 8, 9 years, and it was time for election, and I'll never forget, he got up and said, well, he said, what we're going to do, he said, we're going to just swear in the old bud. And I know Miss Helen Young has said, Miss Helen Young got up, and she was a real old lady, she got up and said, she said, no, we're going to have somebody run against you for president. And Mr. Aloysius Butler used to have him buffaloed, what do you say, And he said, who gonna run against me, everybody all quiet. And she said, Bobby Gant, that's who. And I won. He never came back to another meeting. It was funny.
What did they do? What did they do before you came along and changed it?
Basically nothing. And like I said, the money was drained. They'd come in, they hold meetings, and I'm trying to think what.
Pray or anything?
Huh? The only function they had was on every year on the 15th of August, as close to the 15th of August, they'd have this day, and the rest of the time, it was religion. It was religion. And like I said, I ran in and changed everything. But a lot of them didn't like it. Like I said, the president never came back. He paid his dues for a while, but and then I think he even stopped doing that. But he never came back. But I know Miss Helen Young, I never forget her. She got up and said, Bobby Gant, that's who. I was like, oh, Lord.
Tell me, life's changed a lot in St. Mary's County, and you've got more than 50 years of looking at it. Has it been getting better, or is it worse in some ways?
I would say the period of the 60s, and I always said, I said in my prayers, if I was going to live in St. Mary's County in the time of my life, I think the period of the 60s was the best time for Afro-Americans.
Why is that?
Because of the civil rights movement, because of Kennedy and Lyndon Baines Johnson, and it sort of changed the mood, and it happened right on up. And Jerome Regan got in, and then I've seen a reverse since then.
In terms of racism?
Well, let's put it this way. I was at the Post Tuesday. I worked at the Post passing out literature and talking to people, and this guy came up, this old guy came up, this old white guy came up, and
Is this down at Ridge?
Diamond Ridge. Oh, we still got some of the worst racists that ever was still living down there. And he came up, and now this guy, you never see him. Most of the time you see those guys, they come out 2 times a year. They come out at the election and Easter Mass over there, St. Michael's.
Yeah.
That's the only time you see him. And he came up, he pulled his truck right up in front of our table, he jumped out, and he said, I want you of us have a ballot, you know. And the guy, another white guy was sitting there, he said, yeah, we can give him a sample ballot. And he stood around for a while, and they started talking.
This was a sample ballot.
Yeah, sample ballot. He said he wanted to pick it up and take it back home and look it over. But while he was there, I was staying in there, so he didn't talk to me directly. So he was start talking about politics the way it used to be, you know. So he said, let me tell you something. He said, me and my brother we were cutting wood at the time, he said, and said wood was slow, so we went over 7th District. We had this store. I said, and this colored fellow was sitting there, and the guy behind the counter, whatever the store, wherever it was, you know, was saying had ran for some sort of office and had won. And said, this colored fellow was in there asking for a beer. And the guy told him, said, you don't get out of here, nigga, I'm gonna kick you. Now he's telling this other guy that, you know, and I'm standing there, and he knows that I hear it, so it didn't bother him. He wanted me to hear it. And the other guy was didn't want even him to tell a joke, but he insisted on telling anyhow, you know. So he was saying that the guy, the black guy told the guy, said, well, he called him color fella, said the color fella told the guy, said, well, look, yesterday you gave me all the beer that I wanted. And then he leaned over and said, he said, you know what that prodigy told him? He said, look here, nigga, yesterday I needed your boot. And, you know, and this was a joke he was telling. And I'm standing there. And so the other guy, who was the president of the Democratic club, you know, he didn't want to hear it. He was trying to get the guy to rate. But anyhow, he ignored the guy and started talking to me. So he started talking to me about my son. And he said, Bobby, your son? I said, yeah, he works on the base. You know, I said, he's been there since he got out the Army. I said, since he got out the Army. And when I said that, this white guy looked at me and said, look here, he get ready to say since he got out of jail. Boy, that man made me so mad. I just took him by the shoulder and walked into his truck. I said, look, enough is enough. I said, I don't know what you're trying to do or what you're trying to provoke me into. I said, but this is election day. I want to be here and try to get people to vote for my candidate. But I got
So, in some ways, things are going backwards in your view.
It is.
Yeah.
Things are.
What about the young people? This is an old guy who didn't get any better and is still pretty bad, but what about the younger people?
Some of the younger people, well, my grandson has, you know, I came in contact because of him. Kids don't know any better. You understand what I mean? And he goes to St. Michael's, and he meets these kids, and they want him to come up to his house, and they want to come to my house, you know. And I can sense that some of them are really, the parents are really uncomfortable with it, but they don't say no to the kids. And it's really funny to me. And then some of them are really funny, are friendly, and some of them are probably surprised, you know, because they got this attitude that I'm probably living in a log cabin with the toilet outside, and they don't know any better, you know, until they come visit my house and they find out I live just like they do, you know. So, and I mean, you know, and this is happening now. Some of them really surprised, you know. And some of them might live better than they do, you know. But we still got this stereotype out here, and it's being passed on from one generation to the next.
So what's your prescription?
Is there a solution to this? I try to treat everybody as a human being, and, you know, knowing that they're not, that this is not the general feeling. You know, just because a person dislikes you, you ain't got to dislike them back. And especially with a simple thing, if he only finds fault in me because of the color of my skin, you know, then he has the problem. I don't. I don't have a problem. So if he finds that fault, and there's a lot of them still do, and there's a lot of the racist things that went on, the younger generation has changed, you know, and.
Were you ever afraid when you were growing up down here because of race?
I've never been afraid. All the people that I grew up with, like the Diamonds and the Uffers, they all knew me as a child, you know. And I've never been afraid. In fact, I've always been I've always been. I tell you, I was known as a smart-aleck kid because, you know, there's somebody was always telling on me that I said something as a child that should have been left for grown-ups to say, and that's the way I was, you know. And they always complained to my mother, but I never got beat for it. So. Did
you, when you were up in Baltimore, comparing your black man's experience there to your black man's experience here, what was different?
Basically, in Baltimore, all I always seen was black. I was in, you know, your neighborhood was black. You didn't go downtown at that time, because at that time downtown, around the harbor, that was white. You didn't go down there. All the white theaters, all your theater was right around Pennsylvania Avenue and Harlem Street. So it was basically, you never, you know, the only time you dealt with white people when you went to the store. You know?
That was in the 50s.
Yeah, when you went to the store. Well, you seen because there was a Jew on every corner. The Jewish people owned all the stores at that time. So, but basically, that's all you dealt with. You didn't deal with the white people. Because where I worked at was out in the white area, you know, but it was more like a company, so you still didn't really. And I haven't seen any difference in them. I think the 60s were the time when I think the black man got more respect. Now, whether they got it out of fear, you know, or what, but they did, you know, they got more respect from right now. They, you know, I get the feeling that the average white man, he don't care nothing about you, you know. You know, he don't, you know, the false respect and stuff is the same. And in the 60s, I don't think a lot of them respected you for the fact that you are, because you were a man, they respected you for the fact that somebody burnt down a building, or Martin Luther King, or we had the Malcolm X's, you know, and they, you know, it was sort of a fair thing. Yeah.
Now, in the early 60s, the time of the March on Washington, when King spoke in 63, were there some people from the county that went up to hear that you knew of? Did people talk about that a lot?
I remember watching it on TV. I don't really remember anybody in particular. If they did, I don't remember anybody going up in particular to listen to that. But I remember listening to it on TV. And
what did you think when you were listening to that?
I basically thought that it would, what he was asking really needed divine intervention. You know, I mean, you know, he was calling for black men and white men, holding hands, you know, and he was talking about, you know, I just didn't feel it, you know. With the experiences I had, I just didn't think it was happening, would happen. And there has been some progress, a lot of progress, but it's always, I'm just thinking that we're here and they can tilt either way, and we don't have any control over it. The black man don't have any control over which way it'll go. You know, the white man has this control, and his heart is the one that has to change. I don't think, you know, we can do all we can, and we'll change some minds, but it's always going to be this core group, and that's going to keep, you know, keep it tilting. And every time you tilt this way, you you think you're making progress, then you got this core group that's going to, you know. I mean, somebody can come up like George Wallace in the 60s, you know, David Duke here, you know. You always, and so many people agree with these people.
Well, David Duke didn't make out so well.
He didn't make out so well, but the idea was he has a core support. Yeah, he has a good. In fact, he was on TV not long ago.
Yeah.
Still got that core support.
I'm not supposed to ask questions.
Go ahead.
It
No.
was this one. In the South, I was involved in civil rights too, and in the South there was real fear of retaliation when we had demonstrations and things. I knew you seemed to be kind of fearless in your own actions. Was there a sense that there might be retaliation or violence in St. Mary's County?
I cannot remember any fear that there was going to be some sort of retaliation towards you.
Did people worry about losing their jobs? Or?
I think the white people were worried about their jobs more than the black people did.
Bobby, was the Klan ever active in St. Mary's County that you heard tell about?
No, Calvert County. I've heard Calvert County, but I've never heard St. Mary's County being active in the Klan.
So it sounds as if St. Mary's County was different from the Deep South.
Well, I think this base basically changed a lot.
Made a big difference.
It made a big difference, right?
It brought a lot of outsiders.
You're right. It brought a lot out, some from New York, and some, and people had different ideas, It didn't, but it's very conservative. It's always been a very conservative county. I think it's because it's Catholic. It's Catholic, to me, and they're very conservative in their ideas. I don't see that we are making a lot of progress. In other words, I don't see this thing that Martin Luther King dreamed up nowhere near happening. It's not nowhere near happening. But it's going to take the Lord's interventions. I think the black community has really reached out.
I think so.
Yeah, we really reached out. And well, take the last election of the school board. That was really something, wasn't it? Didn't Murray?
I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
We have to go have lunch.
Mm-hmm.
When you look back on your life, you have a lot of things that you feel real satisfaction in what you've done and the difference you've made. Is there anything you wish you could change that you would do differently now, looking back?
Yes. I think probably, if I would look back, I think I spent my whole life worrying about trying to bring other people along, and I really neglected my personal self. I see so many things I could have did, invested in things I missed, because all my life I've just been voluntary, and I volunteered to help other people, and I really didn't even think about myself, and then I looked around and said, "Doggone, suppose I'd have bought that piece of land." I had the opportunity to do it, and I just, myself was sort of put on the side, and I worried about other people the whole time. And I still have a problem, trying not to worry about other people's problems when I should be, trying to say I'm 58 years old now, But other than that, I'm pretty well satisfied with my life. And I feel good when I see things happen that maybe I had a hand into, And I've been able to, I think my kids have got in positions that they normally wouldn't have got into it if it wasn't for me. I have a daughter that's a deputy sheriff, and I knew she wouldn't have got it if I hadn't been active in, yeah. Like I went in the state's attorney's office now, and I was able to, when my son first came out of the Army, they said he had a freeze on the base. And I knew the guy, head of personnel, so I just went down and talked to him, and he got him a temporary job, and then basically he's
Here.
full-time now. Mhm. So by being active, I got to know people, and I was able to sort of help my kids. They realize, you know, they realize that.
Well, that's remarkable. Thank you very much. This has been wonderful.
Well, really haven't gave you anything because, you know, our, you know, specifics.
We needed to ask the questions that the committee for this project wants us to ask.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd like to talk with you again if we can, and the next time we'll give you warning in advance, and we'll talk more about the history of the church and about
Okay, then that would give me a chance to research.